Morena, everybody. Welcome to our hearings meeting on the 21st of November. I will start with the Karakia. Mai te paimanga raro ki te tae, I te awatonga raro ki te awaraki. Tēnei e te hapuri, awhia e taratahi. Whanau wha, haere mai te toki. E hui kai. We have one apology this morning for Councillor Lou Newman. Can I have someone move the apologies? Thank you, Dale, seconded by Ron. All in favour? Aye. Any conflicts of interest to declare, councillors? No conflicts? So we'll move on to our public forum, and I'd like to welcome...
I'll declare a conflict of interest because I'm on the executive for Carter Society.
Oh, okay.
If I need to.
Thank you. Did you get that, Robin? Okay. Happy to move that. Anyone like to second? Thanks, Dale. All in favour?
Aye.
Right. So welcome to those in our public forum who are speaking this morning. To clarify for the councillors who don't normally sit on our hearings committee, how hearings run is that our submitters have 10 minutes to present their submission. Robin will advise when we get to the 7 minutes. So if our submitters would like to allow 3 minutes for questions, then at that 3-minute time, we can open for questions. For councillors, the questions are only on the submission that we have just heard. They're not open for discussion, and the questions are just to clarify any points on submissions. Because we only have a 10-minute time frame, it may mean that not everybody gets to ask a question. So I'll kind of spread the load around a little bit, so it's not the same person asking all the questions going forward. Any questions for me on that or clarifications? Awesome. So I would like to welcome Jill Greathead as our first submitter.
Morning, everyone. So I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to come and submit. I just want to say at the beginning that, like Steve, I'm on the Karakia Society board as one of the Karakia District Council representatives as well. So we'll be supporting our chair, Sharon Parker, later on this morning. First of all, I'd like to mention that the report is a fantastic report. Excellent. So whoever wrote it, it's very clear. It was very clear to understand. And I think it's probably one of the best ones I've seen. Obviously, as you're probably aware, I'm sure Rod has told you, we went through a major rates review in 2000, was it 11, 12, something along those times. It was massive. So that was an excellent process, but this report was fantastic. In terms of consultation, I was actually away for the month from mid-September to mid-October. So I was unaware of the timeline, unaware of everything. And I missed the town meeting on the 10th because I was away. But I don't remember, and this could be me, getting anything from my email box, which is really how I kind of get to know most things. I don't have a lot of time to go onto Facebook or anything, but also I did get home and the crier was there and there was an excellent 2-pager on that as well. So obviously it's a difficult topic and I think you've made it as clear as possible for people. In terms of background, obviously I was on the council for the major change and I see we've got John Booth also submitting today. And of course Ron was there, so and of course that was one of Ron's promises in 2010 was to change the rating system. It was, I believe, an excellent process. It was extremely thorough. We had many meetings. We had private meetings with people. We had phone calls. It was absolutely massive and went on for many months, if I remember. And we, of course, changed from capital value, from land value, and we had 12 differentials to a far simpler way, which was the urban, rural, commercial split. So, you know, I think that that's held us for the last 10, 12 years since we've done it. I had been on council myself 10 years before we did that process. So I felt personally that I had a pretty good understanding of rating, and I understand that for those of you who have been here just over a year, rating's not the easiest system to understand, and it does take time to kind of catch up with exactly how it works. But I think if you read that out of this particular document, that would give you a very good clear. And I even have witnessed in the past of a couple of finance managers struggling on how rating works, because I've been there for so long, and it's really easy to understand. But it's a good system, generally speaking, I believe. So in terms of my submission, I did it very, very quickly on my return, and I would just like to go through each of those questions. So question 1 was the changing the UAGC to obviously these SUPs or SUIPs. I would be against that completely. Obviously, you will hear Carter Court having issues with that. I think that's a massive change. I have no idea how many rating units would be affected by that. You guys would know those numbers, but I imagine there'll be quite a few rural properties and also quite a few, maybe some people in town. I don't know what the numbers are on that, but that's quite a massive change to land an extra UAGC onto a particular rating unit. Particularly those people who maybe are trying to rent out their granny flats, which whatever, as Airbnbs, as they are trying to cope with cost of living issues. Question, so no for that from me. In terms of the altering, well, putting some of the activities to the general rate, also including the UAGC as opposed to the UAGC only. I've kind of said no to that as well, because that's quite a major change, although I can see some benefits in that. So I can see some benefits. So I'm kind of between no and neutral on that one. In terms of question Q3, the economic development to put it onto commercial, 50%, and then 50% onto UAGC. One of the issues here is certainly in the last 5, 6, 7 years, economic development, our contribution as Carter has basically skyrocketed. So, you know, sort of 7, 8 years ago, it was quite a small fee. It was basically destination MyRAF and what we paid for that. Whereas I understand now it's really quite a large sum. And I understand that obviously you are looking at obviously changing commercial from 2 to 1.8, I imagine, to mitigate that. I'm not sure, I haven't seen the figure. So I haven't actually studied the figures on this. I said no to that one. And then the next one, which is question 5, which is supporting the adjustment to the rural differential from 0.8 to 1. Yes, I'm against that right now as well. I don't think it's a good time to load extra charges onto our rural ratepayers right now with the economy the way it is. And that, again, that will make a massive difference to our rural rating, rural people. And I'm not sure how much difference it's going to make to as urban, who obviously benefit from this, largely benefit from this change. In terms of me being relatively neutral on something, was that whole commercial differential from 2 to 1.8. I'm not sure if there's not that many commercial properties. I'm not sure how much that would make a change to them, and whether or not that is just a consequence of putting the economic development bit on the 50% charge onto them. Again, you have to look at the figures, and I haven't done that. And the last one, which is question 6, again, this has been discussed every single time we do a rates review, and do we change it to 5% or leave it at 10% public good? We've always come to the conclusion, let's leave it the way it is. You know, discussions such as where does all of our tanks, all of our wastewater tanks from rural go? It goes into our obviously into our sewage ponds. It's one of those complicated things. Again, if you're not that sure about something, you're better off leaving it status quo. It's usually the best option. So, in conclusion, I haven't investigated, as I've told you, how many rating units or even studied the tables of the examples. Obviously, that's something which is good to do, to have a look to see how it affects different people with different valuations. But I haven't done that yet. The problem when you change a system like this is that you get absolutely no thanks from people like me who are now and I won't probably thank you for saving me a couple of $100 or whatever it happens to be on my annual rates. But what you will do is you will get pushback from people who are obviously impacted by this change. So, for instance, the number 1, the UAGC to SUP will be a major change. And of course, the change rural to one will be a major change. So you'll get real major pushback on people who are maybe conscious that there is actually a rates review, because some people don't know there is a rates review, I'm sure. My feeling is that with mergers of Wairarapa councils in the year, I don't believe that this is the right time to make any changes to our rating structure. I know that when we did our rating review back in 2011-12, we actually did study the other Wairarapa councils, and they quite different rating systems to us.
Is that 10 minutes?
Yeah, it is. 10 minutes, yeah.
Just 10 minutes of them. That's good.
Awesome.
I did this morning.
Thank you, Jill. That's
Okay,
great.
that's
So unfortunately, we don't have time for questions because it was 10 minutes.
Fine.
Can you let me know when it's
Yeah.
next time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've sent Robin my speaking notes, which has the rest of my bits.
Lovely.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time, Jill, to come in. Ian, welcome.
Morning, everybody. First of all, I must say I didn't expect to be here at 92 years old doing this, so you'll have to excuse me if I'm a bit slow and dottery, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ian Clark. I'm a long-time resident of Carterton. I'm a former borough and district councillor. I spent 24 years as a councillor for the borough and district. I was Works Committee Chairman and a Deputy Mayor at the time of amalgamation with the County Council. My short submission sets out our concerns, and today I'm here to endeavour to answer any questions councillors or staff may have. I've concentrated mainly on the charges that are going to be or suggested that be imposed on our rental property. That's my main concern. So you'll see from my submission, that's basically what we're on about. So if you will have read my submission, I won't go through it. I don't intend to take up a lot of time, but it was explained to me that the situation is that council have reached the limits of their borrowing powers and they have to do this review to sort of get things up to date. But I've got a couple of suggestions, and as the council look at the staff numbers employed and what the outputs are, and the other thing is, in the case of contractors, making sure that we're getting the dollar value from them. It seems, just watching things happen, that this always seems to be contracts take a long time and things go wrong, and how carefully costed the projects are as well. That is my suggestion, that how you may be able to save money instead of continuing to increase rates, because as I said in my submission, if this new rate is imposed on our rental property, our rates without any increase in the annual rate for next year will be about $7,000, and we set out for this to be a sort of retirement plan and to bring us a bit of income, but it's not happening. It's almost getting to a break-even situation, so keep that in mind. And I just have one question that you'll be able to answer for me. Why is our submission going on to YouTube? It said they'll be there within 48 hours, but you're going to do your deliberations with public excluded. That's the only question I have, and that concludes you won't answer that.
No, the deliberations are open to the public
They are open.
this afternoon. Yeah.
Well, it clearly says on the form here that they're closed to the public, I think.
And
never
I think
mind.
it's been published, has it not, on our website that it's 1 o'clock today?
It's the whole day.
Yeah,
Oh, well, if I'm wrong, excuse me.
that's kind.
And that's all I have, so if anyone has any questions they
Thank
want.
you. Thank you so much for taking the time, Ian. Does anyone have any questions, any councillors on the submission?
Yeah, on the figure of 7,000 that you quoted is, which would be, is that, did you say that would be the level of increase?
Yeah. At the present time, including at regional council rates, we're paying almost 6,000 now. And from the calculations I've seen or done, that increase will add another $1,000 or $1,100 to our annual bill. So that's what I'm concerned about.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. Thank you for coming in today. Really, really appreciate your time and your submission. Your submission was very clear too, so that's given us much information. You are more than welcome to stay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
No.
Next up.
If you're ready. Absolutely, welcome. So as I explained before, we have 10 minutes for submissions. Robin will let us know when we're at the 7-minute mark. We'd like to leave sort of 3 minutes or so for any questions from our councillors.
Thank you very much.
So welcome.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Liz Brady. I'm Senior Policy Advisor with Federated Farmers. And I know that you all have submission in front of you and you will have read it. So I'll just step through each of the sections as set out and just highlight a couple of key points in respect of each. So let's start. Thank you to council for commissioning the review and doing a reasonably thorough one. Do appreciate that sometimes the opportunity to do a proper review can skip by for year on year. So I do commend council on that and acknowledge that some of our individual members of Federated Farmers are also making submissions. So I'll follow through in order. SUIP, council put the proposal on the table to change the rating basis to SUIP. At one level, I can 100% understand where it's coming from. But at another level, it becomes problematic. I looked at submissions this morning and I see that a submission there from someone pointing out that actually in town, chances are it's going to impact mostly on the oldie goldies. In the country setting, we've highlighted here that the way it plays out is that in situations where farms have diversified, under the red tide of regulation, farms have diversified into a bit of farm tourism to stay afloat and contribute to the district at the same time. And those tourists, farm tourists, of course, they come and go, they pay rates somewhere else. So at one level, I can understand the rationale for proposing that we look at this, but at another level, actually, how does it play out? So our main recommendation on this one is that council, I think, need to just give us a bit more clarity on what the intent and effect of this change would be. Moving on to UAGC, compliments again to council. I think you have been in the habit of using UAGC to the full 30%. I see there that you want to, jiggle fiddle around a little bit with UAGC and the general rate. Just want to absolutely emphasise that the UAGC rate, which of course is the services that everybody benefits from, and the principle is it's spread equally. Please continue to use the UAGC to the maximum 30%. General rate. Now, this is the biggie that I will spend just a touch more time on. This is the one where council is proposing to remove the rural differential. I'll just highlight a couple of points here. One is that the urban population is roughly 50-50, but the urban population is a bit more than 50 and the rural population is a bit less than 50. And in terms of the general rate, as I understand, and very happy to be corrected if councils have other information, but certainly the consultation document states that the urban sector pay less than 50%, in fact 39% of the general rate. And by implication, this must mean that the rural sector with less than 50% of the population is paying 61% of the general rate. And to illustrate that discrepancy for the general rate, council staff were very helpful. Thank you to council staff with my queries. So I'm looking at a spreadsheet which council staff kindly provided just to break out what's happening with the general rate. Urban residential properties, currently medium 1,100, high 1,800. And the proposal was that those urban residential properties on the general rate would have a drop down to 1,000 or 1,700. For a rural pastoral property, so this is just a farm family located out on the farm, currently they're more than double, 2,700. And the proposal here is that they go up again to 3,000. So just reminding ourselves what's in that general rate, governance, all members of the community benefit, community development, benefits the whole of the community, emergency management, the whole community benefit, parks and reserves for the benefit and enjoyment of the whole community. So these are community-based, population-based services. But at the moment, the rural sector is paying over and above. And council's proposal is that discrepancy, in fact, be exaggerated. What the essence of the proposal that's on the table at the moment is that the urban sector with more than half the population, 54%, should contribute less than the current 39%, and that the rural sector with less than 50% of the population should pay more than the current 61%. So that does not sit at all well with Federated Farmers on behalf of our farming members. And our recommendation is 1, yes, retain the rural differential. 2, recognising that currently it's set at 0.8, but notwithstanding that differential, the rural sector is still paying over the odds, that the rural differential in fact be set at 0.6. And that's something that Federated Farmers advocated for some years ago when you made this shift. And we're highlighting that the 0.8 didn't cut the mustard, it should indeed have been 0.6. Targeted rates, this one is very straightforward. The services that are accessed only by the serviced urban area, they need to be 100% paid by the urban sector. Roading rates, I'm sure councillors and council staff will be aware that MDC, they're consulting as well.
That's 7 minutes.
Thank you. I'm just about to wrap up. Thanks, Robin. So you will be aware that MDC are consulting on the rating review at the minute. MDC, and I'm so sure like here I've heard the same thing. There's a level of concern about the impact of forestry on roads. And so the approach that MDC are taking is not to just sort of pluck a forestry differential out of fresh air. They're going to do some sort of an exercise in the coming months to have a proper local look at what's forestry on roads with a view to next year, consulting on a differential. Now, that certainly strikes us as a very sound and sensible approach. And further to that, it would be even more sound and sensible if our 3 local councils collaborated on that review. So that's our recommendation to Carterton on that one. So in conclusion, our 2 key recommendations are please continue to use UAGC to the full 50%, and that the rural differential on the general rate be retained, and that it be set at 0.6.
Councillors, any questions? Dale?
Thank you. When you were doing the calculations and the split around general rate, the 39% and the 61 urban and rural,
Yep.
Did you also do calculations around the split of council expenditure on roading and the location of roading and bridges? And if you did, what did you find?
Short answer, no, councillor. And I'm just going to say here that the consultation document, while it does a good job of setting out the impact by individual properties, across the range of, residential, low, medium, high, and lifestyle, and et cetera. So it does a good job of setting out that analysis by individual property. I recommend it to CDC and MDC and SWDC that when they do these reviews, they should explicitly do exactly that analysis that you're proposing, that you look across the rating, the activities, be it roads or general or this thing or that thing, and provide that analysis of how the costs are falling against the ratepayer groups. So did I have that information available to me? No, I did not. Is that basic information to support informed decision-making for council, and would have helpfully supported informed submissions from the community? Yes, it would be.
Okay.
One more question if anyone has one. Steve?
Thanks, Liz. How many farms would Federated Farmers represent?
I haven't got the breakdown for across the region, and of course most of our farms are in the Wairarapa, not over the hill. We've got about 400 members, and of course some of those are members with more than one farm. So from our perspective, most of the commercial farms are members.
Can I just ask one quick question? Just in regard to the sewer,
Yes.
did I understand you to say that your major concern is really around the tourism type activities based on farms, and that the sewer would adversely affect them, but that you were kind of broadly understood the idea that one family, one UAGC would be reasonable?
Yes, do you understand that principle? And I think that, the principle that sits in behind it is that these are population-based services, democratic services, community management and restaurants. So those are population-based services. And if you've got a household and a household and a household, then it makes sense that you spread accordingly. The difficulty is that you get into all these grey areas where it's temporary accommodation and tourism and the oldie oldies and the granny flat. That's the difficulty, and that's really why the consultation document didn't really make clear what's the effect of it. And just one other related point that we do make here, for a farm that has indeed got, let's say, mum and dad are semi-retired and they've set themselves up in a fresh new house on the farm, and Sonny Jim's moved in and he's carrying on. So we've now got 2 farming families. In the first instance, yes, I agree. Those 2 farming families are both using all the range of services. However, to the extent that you rely on CV, those two houses within the farm unit have already been factored into higher CV. So there's if you rate on CV and you rate on SUIP, it's actually a double whammy.
Answer your question, Steve?
Absolutely.
Liz, thank you so much for your time and for your really fulsome submission. It was great to read and really, really appreciated all the information and your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, before I welcome Rebecca up, just for the minutes, please, Robin. So was this what was sent out to submitters? So on the document that was sent out to the submitters, it does actually say that the hearings committee will hold a public excluded meeting. So I think that must have just been a typo, but
I think it came from the last hearing, it was copied over, yeah.
okay, yeah, but on our website and on our agenda, it was actually on the web saying that it was not public excluded, it was open to the public. So thank you for bringing, so that can be just minuted. Thank you. Rebecca, welcome.
So thank you for the opportunity to come and speak this morning. I'm just going to use my laptop for notes, so please excuse my lack of eye contact. So it's kind of nice going after Liz actually, because I'd like to address some of the things that she has mentioned. And as some of you will know, I have strong opinions on this is the correct word. In fact, I was doing some of this last night and my husband was like, he said, "You're such a nerd." I said, well, if I'm not going to be a nerd and come speak to council, then who is? So I thought I've got to come along and actually share, I guess, my opinion somewhat on behalf of urban residents, but also this is my personal opinion. Firstly, Carterton has come under fire for its comparatively high rates, as you all know. According to the Taxpayers Union, who I don't particularly like at the best of times, but we are #1 in the country for residential rates. It has long been my opinion that this ranking is not due to council wasting money or having higher rates than other councils. It's due to our rating system and the way that we're allocating our rates. So a big red flag for me is the fact that we're #1 for our residential rates, but 52nd, huge disparity, 52nd out of 78 councils for our average rural rates. And this is not just due to the high water infrastructure costs in town. So I'm very supportive of the changes proposed in this rating review, although I would propose a few additions. So I'm in favour of the change to the UAGC being charged to separately used or inhabited parts. Extra households should contribute to these public good items. Farms with multiple workers' houses should contribute to these activities too. And this is a common approach across New Zealand. However, with the UAGC currently being maximised at 30%, it is generating some inequitable outcomes, as some other submitters have also noted. So like Liz said, yes, they actually are getting a double whammy. There are very few councils in New Zealand that maximise the UAGC to 30%. And I don't know if any research was done on this, but it would actually be quite interesting to know the exact figures. And the reason that they don't maximise this to 30% is because it increases the overall rating burden for low-income households. So, for example, Marsden District Council currently has their charge fixed at 20.4% of their total rate take, and they're currently proposing to increase it to 22.9%. South Wairarapa is currently proposing through their consultation to have a range of 20 to 30%, so they can bring it up to the max, but they can also adjust it if required. So I'm interested to know if changing the UAGC percentage has been discussed yet. I would encourage some more thought around reducing this. It would also be worth discussing the impact on some rateable properties that are clear outliers in this policy, for example, Carter Court, and if appropriate, then provide relief through the rates remission policy. But I would suggest that you don't make your decision based on the outliers, base it on the majority, and then fix any outliers with your rates remission policy. So I'm in favour of charging urban and rural residents an equal general rate proportionate to their capital value. So yes to bringing up the differential to one. Firstly, the reason for these activities being in the general rate in the first place is that no primary beneficiaries can be identified. Everyone benefits equally. And as such, are considered that these activities are considered public good. So this, in essence, is the part of our rates that we consider taxes for the public good and contribute to the type of country we want to live in. Income taxes do not contribute to our parks and reserves, for example, or our environmental health services. But I would like to live in a society that has parks and green spaces and values the health of its citizens. And so I'm happy to contribute to that because that's the only way that I am contributing towards that. And not just in Carterton, but for the towns that we visit on trips away and we don't contribute to. So the rationale behind public benefit proportions just needs to be consistent. So if the general good portion, water and wastewater, is reduced, so should the stormwater and water races proportions. And it may be, but it wasn't actually specified in the consultation document. The current practice of discounting the roading activities for rural ratepayers is inequitable and unjustifiable. 86% of our sealed roads, the vast majority, are in the rural zone, and pretty much 100% of our gravel roads. And transport is the second highest activity for a capital spend in this year's annual plan and the largest operational expenditure per activity in this year's annual plan. But currently, rural properties contribute 20% less per dollar of capital value compared to urban ratepayers. This inequity has been allowed to go on for far too long, and I'm glad the council is proposing to change this. For comparison, MDC is currently reviewing their rating policy and is proposing to increase their roading expenditure allocations to 70% of their roading budget funded by rural, 70%, 30% urban. I wouldn't suggest we go down that track necessarily, but rural and urban ratepayers need to fund this on the same level. And going forward, it even may be worth introducing a targeted rate to rural properties to contribute to a rural emergency roading fund, especially as weather events increase. And yes, that means that some rural properties will pay more general rates than some urban properties. This is the legislative framework that we are working in. Whatever rating system we use, it will have an element of a progressive tax rate. Even if you went with the population basis, that portion would still be allocated on capital value, as Masterton does, or land value. So that is going with the principle that those who have larger wealth, i.e. capital value, should contribute a larger portion dollar-wise in taxes. This comes with its hang-ups, as we all know, that being asset rich doesn't equate to being cash rich. However, this is what is set in legislation, and any system you use is going to have that. Council should not continue with the rural differential for the sake of ability to pay, as I have seen suggested in some submissions. It's tough on both sides of the fence, urban and rural. I get that rural people are often asset rich and cash poor, but there are equally many people in town, especially elderly on fixed incomes, who are in the same predicament and who cannot afford to be paying any more than their fair share. And then a couple of very quick suggestions. Forestry rate. I support the other submissions on this, and I would encourage the council to investigate implementing a forestry differential to account for harvesting impact on roading. And ideally, a consistent policy across the Wairarapa would be fabulous. And in regards to the economic development being targeted to commercial and industrial businesses, I would suggest that the CBD businesses are given their own rating group and a business improvement district is set up. So I don't know if you've looked at that. Basically, it would mean that council would introduce a targeted rate for CBD businesses and pass it on to a business association or some sort of management group. 10 minutes. Cool, thank you. That then can use those rates for benefit of the area. So project promotions, environmental improvements, advocacy, etc. Something that would enhance the business improvement district. So there are a number of councils using this concept around New Zealand, and it would be a good way to target the economic development funding to enhance the town centre. So thank you for your time and all the best of the deliberations. I'm happy to answer any questions in the time I've got left. But otherwise, I'll send an email of this document to you all in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. That was great. It's good to have you back in the room. Missed you.
That's quite fun. Yeah, I don't have time for this, but it's great.
Are there any questions from any of our councillors? Oh, I think you gave us a huge amount. Yeah, it'd be great if you could email the submission through and then we've got. Great. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Our last submitter before we break for a morning tea break is Alan Scher.
Right, I do have some copies
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
and I do have, that one is no mistakes. These
Oh,
are
thanks.
little mistakes.
I get that.
So if anybody else would like, yes, no.
Just a lot.
No, mine's not quite as complicated as that last one. Thank you for this opportunity of saying this. I'm not a person to actually come and do this sort of thing, but I feel quite strongly about what I'm going to talk about. This here, what I'm going to talk about relates to the submission I handed in. So the 1, 2s, what have you down here to 12 relate to the numbers down here, but I'm not talking on them all. I'm just talking on a few that I want to emphasise. Point 1, this is I'm talking about our cottage, which is a cottage for R&R people to come and rest. So it's, we've been dreaming about this, or I've been dreaming about this since the 90s, and finally when Carlton were able to build a place and it started in the 18, that would have been in that message that I gave, 2018 it started. And basically it's for those people who want, as I've stated, R&R, they just want to relax, they want to put up their feet, and those suffering burnout, because I've been in burnout myself and I know what it's like. And so our place is not overly expensive so that people can afford to come and take a break. And a number of people have, and some people have come in, shut the doors, and been there for a period of time and then gone. We haven't even seen them, so they're just being used the opportunity. Our main encouragement comes from our guests, who either write a note or tell us or remark about the lawns, the gardens, the flowers, which my wife does, and it's quite amazing. It all takes time, effort, and cost. And that's number 1. Number 6, our mortgage is $862 per month. This is our main expense along with insurance. We pay a tithe. The cottage pays a tithe for everything that comes in, and that is given to those in need wherever. We have superannuitants. I'm just saying that because we don't have a fixed income. I mean, we do have a fixed income. And so any expenses that are extra expenses, we've got to find somewhere. And so we do not pay ourselves, and we do cover our expenses, of course, with cottage, mow, line trimmers and that sort of thing. It does cost, so we pay that. We do employ a cleaner when things get tight. You might have some people guest in night after night, and then a 2-night, we can't handle it. So we have a cleaner to come in and handle that, and we do the rest. And number 7, with 3, and you would have noticed in my submission that 10 nights is our limit. If we go under 10 nights for too many months, we're going down the tube. So with 3 months under 10 nights in this winter, which is the hardest winter we've sustained since 2018, we are frugal with our finances and have been able to cope. You spread costs out to cover what's coming up. We do have an account that covers all IRD payments and accountant payments. We charge 15% off whatever it is. Number 8 is our next one. Our accommodation is not a rental or a place that is continually booked. We have 2 platforms, Airbnb and Vrbo, and we take those who come in, who ask for where they come to accommodation. Sometimes guests can be sparse, as is the winter that's just gone. Good for a rest, but not good for us financially. And number 12, if this was to go, the UAGC was to go ahead, we could go under. Other accommodations could be stretched and there would be less tourists in the area. I think there's around about 40-something Airbnb pieces, places in the Carterton area, which would bring in over a period of year a lot of finance into the Carterton. So we are doing our bit for the council, for the area, for Carterton, but we can't sustain extra costs. That's it.
Thank you. It's great. Questions, Dale?
Thank you. Your submission really covers off very well the details of your operation and the impact of the proposals. Have you given any thought, or can you make any comment on the principles that the council is considering in the proposals that are put forward? Like, I mean, above your own specific circumstance, have you given any thought to what council's trying to achieve or needs to achieve out of the proposals that are being put forward?
I can understand when you have a property with 3 houses on it, with 3 lots of families, and the property only paying for 1 house. I can understand that. But my concern is that we've got a separate cottage mainly for accommodation. It is not, people are like, we don't have a sustained lot of people's people. I tried to rent it, but it just doesn't put the bill sort of thing. So I'm concerned that if the extra is at 30% per house goes in, we won't be able to handle that for our cottage, because we don't. If we had a continual people coming in every night, we might be able to, but not on the. Is it a 30% you charge per house for the council rates?
No. No.
So there's a percentage you charge per house on a section.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, we're here to ask questions. We can't really get into explaining the rating system. It's a challenge the way that the hearing worked, but no. We're talking about the uniform annual general charge as the SUIP, as this that would apply per property.
So what would you charge?
So we actually, so the purpose of the hearings is for us to ask questions. If you've got any questions on the rating, click an email through to the council staff and they'll be able to break that down for you. We're just here to listen to people's submissions so we can make a decision when we deliberate this afternoon as to how hearings are run generally.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have enough information at the moment to actually ask a question.
Right. I just have a question, just curiosity. So you've just, your cottage, it's 1 bedroom? It is.
Fully
Furnished and has everything in. What sort of are the charge, what do you charge that out at a nightly?
140.
140 a night, okay.
Helen, how big is it?
A house?
Yeah.
35 square meters. So it has everything you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so
What's the average duration of people who stay?
Well, at the moment, we have a person staying for about a month, but that's the first time we've ever had. The duration would be around about 2 nights, no more than 3 nights. And then there could be a gap. Sometimes there's a week in between with nobody there at all.
You got figures on your occupancy rate?
Sorry?
Have you got a figure on your occupancy rate?
I didn't think of that.
Yeah, okay.
I can give it to you if you
That'd be useful.
would. Okay.
thank you so much for your time and for taking the time to submit and for coming and giving us as much information as you've been. Really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellen.
Right, we will now adjourn until 10:20.